Number one, I think my firm learning in the last 10 years has been really that actually content drives demand. Wherever you go, in whatever aspect of the word, in each and every aspect, content does drive demand. We've had lots of learning lessons, even now today in new media. If I can just take one or two brief ones. We researched about 10 years back that kids were mostly watching Z horror shows at that particular point in time, and therefore what would they necessarily want to do because they didn't have any content for themselves. We started off with a kids program called Shakalaka Boom Boom on Star TV, and at that time we had to convince them to put that show on also, because it was 7 p.m. and it was a non-prime time slot. Our learning there, because that program registered at that time as 7 TRP, is that when you offer a 4 to 14 segment of content that they want to watch, they're willing to move. From that came the fact that we wanted to launch a kids channel when there were 6 multi-majors here, because I think we had the nimbleness and the flexibility to be able to access not content libraries that was historically Western and add the local flavor. I don't think research can ever tell us necessarily what is the next wave of content. I think that's a very important learning from our point of view. It's never going to be articulated in that sense. There's no amount of research that can tell us that a Rang De Basanti was, when there were 4 period films, and when all the hero protagonists die at the end, was ever going to actually affect a nation. So we take some of these trigger points, and I think that's the constant learning that we need to go back and ask ourselves every morning and every evening. Are we being disruptive with our thought process and content? Research will be a guide, but will never really tell you exactly what is the next big thing you're going to look for. And it's a combination of the intuitiveness of this industry, of our experience, about bright ideas that are going to trigger that thought process. My second thought I'd like to leave behind is that I think the word content for most people, it has to be really redefined. And that is a little bit of a change of a mindset. Because I think for most people in content, and I interact with a lot of people, is we go back to thinking of linear video programming in some form or the other. Television, big screen, small screen, whatever. But it's moving pictures. And I think the content, the way we see it now, is something that has to be redefined and relooked at. Because the core audience, which is your younger audience, whether it's the 4 to 14 or the 16 to 34, actually is not, when they're distinguishing that, the concept of almost product applications, that's really going to be the key defining part of how we're going to be able to look at content. It's not just a linear story. A location-based program of some sorts could actually be a trigger for your next advent in terms of content. And I think that's something that we need to query. The 3 key aspects of the future of content, which we keep asking ourselves every time we're looking at anything, whether it's on a big screen, small screen, medium screen, the mobile or whatever else, is it personalized? Is it interactive? And is there a community? If it's not any of these, and it's and it's not or. Because if it's not a combination of these 3, the chances are that while we're all planning that all content will grow across all platforms, my personal view is it won't. Because if it's not got these 3 ingredients, it's not future-proofed for us to be able to create content in that part. It has to be interactive. People are looking for it only to be personalized. And the element of community, whether Facebook represents community, the same is applicable when you're designing anything else in content, because that's the core. People want to look at it where they can actually socialize and have it as a social medium for the 3. So what you'll have as a challenge is that we will create motion pictures, and we think they'll go across all platforms. So we'll create television shows and broadcast channels. But broadcast channels don't necessarily migrate to new mediums in a self-standing manner. They may need to be massively repurposed. They may need to be massively meta-tagged. Whatever the applications, I think the future of all content, if we're not thinking at least with these 3 broad parameters, I believe that they're not fully future-proof for all the other aspects. And I think India has the sort of now learning in hindsight of many other markets, whether it's Korea, Japan on one side, China in a different way on the other side, and of course US and Europe. If you take these 3 broad segments, you will find various different consumer patterns that emerge in these 3 different diasporas that actually are great learning lessons of what we could do to future-proof the way we look at our content. Third, and on a smaller base, and connected with future-proofing, is that in India, I think we really, again, don't think of anything when we're looking at content as a franchise. And so I would like to leave the word of the thought that you need to be able to extend successful content, not just goes across that same content going across all platforms, but that same brand. We are investing tons and tons of money to create a brand, whether it's the brand of a TV show, a soap opera, a reality show, a movie, anything else. That is a brand. FMCGs invest tons of money to be able to do that so that they can have an annuity business for 30 and 40 years. We don't plan for it to be a 30 to 40-year annuity business. So the ability to franchise is really the key element. And if you look at all the conglomerates and the media companies that actually dominate the world, their biggest aspect in every aspect of their content is a franchise. So whether it is a motion picture or whether it's a television show or whether it's Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, if we can look at everything that we're doing in content for it to be franchisable, can a movie get on to be a TV show, get onto it, and as a different brand as a communication on a news channel? Can it get onto a different medium when it comes to the mobile? That is really the key. And if we don't think laterally again, we're going to miss a lot of opportunities and leave a lot on the table and work that much harder to be able to get to the same aspect of what we're doing. Fifth, I think when we look at, again, content, the largest single segment of the content industry worldwide is games. Okay, it's larger than Hollywood, it's larger than films, it's larger than broadcasting. Of course, in India, it's still at a very nascent stage because of the limited connectivity of broadband and internet, so you can't play it online. Mobile has come in, but most people have focused on voice and not VAS, so it's just the beginning stages of that. And obviously, when you're looking at all the other mediums, in terms of console, this has been a high-priced unit, and nobody's been able to penetrate that here. But it's the single largest consumption. And if you see the DNA of games, it actually fulfills all the three aspects of: is it interactive, is it community-based, and is it personalized? And I think that's a segment that we need to look at because it has to be originated out of here in many aspects. It's a slow process, but it's just at the moment a pin on a board that needs to be looked at. And I think in each of our conventional mediums today, whether it's in television or in movies, again, the element of franchise, of taking it out of there and looking at it in a different sense, is the key. So lastly, when we're looking at the challenge, there are really two challenges when we look at content. Number one, how do we maximize revenue? And how do we be disruptive and innovative about our content? And I think that's really going to be the key challenge. I think my criterions for innovation and disruptive is: how do we future-proof every single concept idea that we're looking? How do we put some of these characteristics, and I'm sure there are more of that, how do we look at them being franchised? I think on the revenue side, again, all of these will add to necessarily being something much broader. Because otherwise, we're going to look at everything in a very localized manner. And we'll keep quizzing ourselves as to why the film industry is not growing and why can it not be from a $1.5 billion industry to a $10 billion industry, but it's not going to be, because if the thinking is not there for us to be able to create 10x, and if you go from 1 to 1.5x, it's really not going to happen. So I think revenue monetization is going to be the key aspect. This is a country where, whether we like it or not, for the last 20 years, the DNA of most consumers have been that we don't naturally, by reflex, pay for content. 400 channels, now 600 channels, your average cable bill is 75 rupees. That's unprecedented anywhere else in the world. So the basic DNA is that I won't pay more than 5 rupees for the channel. I'll download that application for 100 rupees on my iPhone for that same channel, but I just won't pay the 6 rupee on cable. The broad aspect is we've got to look at innovation and disruptiveness, and we have to look at how we can take the revenue to the next level. And my last concluding point in that, again, was that if the consumer is not going to start paying, our revenue models are not going to go to 10x. It can be in cable and broadcasting. It can be in mobile. It can be in 4G and broadband from that perspective, or in theaters. But the hope is, and I think there is a silver lining there, that when we've been able to offer that, there has been a consumption pattern. It may be at a small segment today, but it is very much there. So I think we have a tremendous opportunity, a great way we can look back at some learning curves. India is a very unique country. You cannot take the best examples of any country in the world and migrate them automatically to India. It's bound to fail. But between the two, I think we're sitting on a cusp of a very interesting decade.